One afternoon, as thunder rolled in the distance, Daniel entered the kitchen with a small wooden box. "Mama Grace," he said quietly, "I want to show you something." Inside lay a silver cross, slightly tarnished. "It was hers," he whispered. "I keep it with me when things get hard." He touched it gently, then smiled. "You know, sometimes I dream that she's still here. Not as a ghost, but as someone near." Amara's chest tightened until breathing hurt. "Maybe she is," she said softly. "Some loves are too strong to die." He nodded, tears tracing slow rivers down his cheeks. At night, she began leaving small things by his door: a bowl of soup when he skipped dinner, a folded blanket when the night turned cold. Daniel never knew who left them, but he started calling the mysterious helper his angel. "Mama Grace," he told her one morning, "someone keeps doing kind things for me. Maybe God sent them to comfort me." She smiled behind her scarf. "Yes, child," she said. "God has many hands, some old, some hidden." And in that moment, Amara felt something new bloom in her chest, not just grief, but gratitude. Her disguise had become her bridge back to her son's heart. Meanwhile, Chaik and Ifioma mocked Daniel's faith. Still praying to ghosts. Chaik sneered one morning over breakfast. "You should learn from the living, not cling to the dead." Daniel said nothing, only stared at his coffee, his fingers tracing invisible circles on the cup. Ifioma laughed and added, "He spends his time talking to cleaners now. Maybe that's why he smells like detergent." Their laughter filled the room, but when they left, Amara stepped forward and wiped Daniel's cup gently, her eyes full of fire she could not show. "Kindness," she whispered, "is not weakness. It's the only strength that survives." As days passed, she noticed Daniel growing more curious. He began asking quiet questions about the company, about missing accounts, about the way servants were treated. "Mama Grace," he said one day, "doesn't it seem strange that everything changed so quickly after my mother's death?" She hesitated. "Truth often hides where noise is loudest," she replied. He nodded slowly. "Then I'll listen to the quiet." That answer filled her with pride. He was no longer just mourning, he was awakening. But awakening in a house built on lies was dangerous. Late one night, Amara walked past his room and found the door slightly open. Daniel knelt beside his bed, hands clasped, whispering a prayer. "God," he said, "if my mother can hear me, tell her I forgive them. I only wish she could see that I still love her." Tears ran down Amara's face silently. She wanted to rush in, to hold him, to tell him she was there. But she stayed still, letting his words sink deep into her heart like balm over old wounds. For the first time since her plan began, she felt peace, fragile but real. The next morning, she overheard a cruel plan unfolding. Chaik and Ifioma were in the living room, talking to a man in a suit. "We need Daniel out of the way," Chaik said. "He's asking questions." The man nodded. "We could transfer him to the new branch abroad, permanently." Ifioma smiled. "Perfect. The sentimental child will be gone, and the rest is ours." Amara's pulse thundered in her ears. She hurried back to the laundry room, trembling. Her son, the only one who still believed, was about to be exiled for loving her too much. She fell to her knees and whispered, "God, give me a sign. It's time." That sign came sooner than she expected. That evening, Daniel entered the kitchen, unusually quiet. "Mama Grace," he said, "they want me to leave for London next week. They say it's for training, but," he looked at her, eyes wide with fear, "I think it's something else." Amara's throat tightened. "Then trust your heart," she said softly. "Sometimes safety is just another word for silence." He studied her face for a long moment. "You speak like someone who knows," he said. She smiled faintly. "I've been alive long enough to see truth wear many disguises." He nodded, still uncertain, but something in her tone seemed to calm him. That night, after everyone slept, Amara opened her journal again. Her handwriting wavered, but her purpose was clear. "Tomorrow," she wrote, "I will reveal the first shadow. I have seen who mourns, who steals, who believes. My child still stands where honor lives. The world will soon see him for who he is." She closed the book and placed her hand over her heart. Outside, the wind rose like the whisper of her late husband's voice, urging her forward. She was no longer afraid. When morning came, Daniel found a note slipped under his door. It read simply, "Light will expose all darkness. Be still and ready." He looked around, confused, but somehow comforted. Amara watched from the hallway, hidden, her old scarf trembling in her hands. Soon, the mansion would burn, not with fire, but with truth. And when the ashes settled, she prayed that Daniel would stand among them, unbroken, shining like the light he carried all along. The morning of the board meeting arrived with heavy clouds. The mansion buzzed with unusual tension, servants whispering, phones ringing, doors slamming. Chaik had invited lawyers and journalists under the pretense of announcing a new family partnership. But beneath the polished smiles and rehearsed speeches, something darker brewed. Amara, still disguised as Mama Grace, moved silently among the chaos, her heart beating in sync with the ticking clock. She knew today would decide everything. Truth had waited long enough. Daniel sensed it too. He sat in his room, hands trembling over a letter from the company's foreign branch. His transfer papers were ready, his flight already booked. "They want me gone," he whispered. His eyes, once full of light, dimmed with betrayal. He folded the paper, tucked it in his pocket, and stared at his mother's portrait. "Mama," he murmured, "I'll stay until I understand." Outside his window, thunder rolled like the echo of a buried promise. In the hallway, Amara stopped Ngozi by the laundry room. "It's time," she said quietly. "Call Mr. Adeyemi. Tell him to bring the files and meet me at noon. And send word to the journalist." Ngozi nodded, her hand shaking. "Madam, what if they hurt you?" Amara smiled faintly. "You cannot hurt a woman who has already died once." She squeezed Ngozi's hand. "Today, we resurrect the truth." By 11 o'clock, the mansion's main hall glittered with full celebration. A long table stood covered with documents, wine, and fruit untouched. Guests arrived in suits and silk, greeting Chaik with applause. "You've done well for your family," one investor said. "Your late mother would be proud." Chaik smiled, arrogance lighting his face. "We move forward together," he announced. Ifeoma, radiant in Amara's old jewelry, nodded beside him like a queen claiming a stolen crown. Daniel entered quietly, staying near the door. He looked out of place, no suit, no confidence, just quiet fire behind his eyes. Ifeoma rolled hers. "At least pretend to smile, Daniel," she said under her breath. He didn't answer. In a corner, unseen, Amara swept slowly, head bowed, eyes sharp. Every detail felt like a final rehearsal, the chandelier trembling with wind, the air heavy with perfume and deceit. When Mr. Adeyemi arrived at the gate, Ngozi met him secretly and slipped him a note, "Wait for her signal." At exactly noon, Chaik lifted a glass. "Ladies and gentlemen," he declared, "today marks a new era. We honor my mother's legacy by continuing her vision." "Your mother's legacy?" A voice interrupted from the back. All heads turned. The cleaner stepped forward, her mop clattering to the floor. Her scarf slipped slightly, revealing eyes too familiar to ignore. Chaik frowned. "Who allowed you in here?" he barked. She didn't move. "Your mother's legacy," she repeated, her tone sharper now, each word slicing through the air. "Tell me, Chaik, which part of her legacy includes forgery, theft, and betrayal?" Gasps filled the room. Ifeoma's wineglass froze midair. Daniel's heart pounded. Something in that voice tugged at the deepest corners of his soul. Chaik laughed uneasily. "Throw her out," he ordered the guards. But before they could move, the woman untied her scarf. The room fell silent. The hair was shorter, the face thinner, but the eyes, those eyes, carried authority born from love and pain. Daniel dropped his glass. Ifeoma staggered backward. "It's not possible," she whispered. "Mother." Daniel breathed. Amara Okeke stood tall in the center of the hall, no longer the invisible servant. "Yes," she said, voice steady. "Your mother, the one you buried in your greed before her body was even cold." Chaik's mouth hung open. "This is some trick." She raised her hand. "Silence." The word cracked like thunder. "You forged my signature. You sold what your father built. You lied to the people who trusted you. And you," she turned to Ifeoma, "wore my clothes like trophies while treating others like dirt." The journalist entered quietly at the back, his camera blinking red. Ngozi followed with Mr. Adeyemi and 2 police officers in plain clothes. Chaik froze. What is this? Evidence, Amara said calmly. She handed Mr. Adeyemi the folder she'd gathered from weeks of observation. Photographs, recordings, emails. Every signature, every sale, every lie is here. You wanted to erase me. Instead, I watched you from the dust you thought was beneath you. If silence had weight, the mansion would have collapsed under it. Chaik stepped forward, face pale. Mother, Don't call me that, she said softly. A son who sells his mother's soul for profit has no name I recognize. Ifeoma began to cry. Please, Auntie, I didn't. Amara stopped her with a glance. You didn't know love, child. That was your greatest sin. Then she turned to Daniel. Her expression softened instantly. And you, she said, her voice trembling, you kept the light alive. Even when they mocked you. Even when the house forgot my name. Tears filled Daniel's eyes as he fell to his knees. Mama, he whispered. I knew you weren't gone. Amara knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she lifted his face. You were the reason I came back, she said. The world must see what true love looks like, not in riches, but in loyalty. Mr. Adeyemi stepped forward and opened the new will Amara had written in secret weeks before. His voice rang clearly as he read, I, Amara Okeke, being of sound mind and body, hereby revoke all previous documents and declare Daniel Okeke the sole heir of my estate and companies. Gasps swept the room again. Ifeoma screamed. Chaik lunged forward, but the officers stopped him. You can't do this, he shouted. You're insane. Amara rose, eyes cold. Insanity, she said, is believing wealth replaces love. She turned to the journalist. You wanted a story? Here's your headline. Mother returns from the dead to expose her own family. Flashes exploded as cameras captured every face. Chaik's fury, Ifeoma's disbelief, Daniel's tears, Amara's unshaken calm. The rain outside finally broke, pounding against the glass like applause from heaven. Hours later, after the guests had scattered and silence reclaimed the house, Amara stood by the balcony, watching water wash the dust from the marble floor. Daniel joined her quietly. You could have stayed gone, he said softly. Why come back? She looked at him, smiling faintly. Because love is not proven by words, my son. It's tested by absence. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Now I know who truly loved me when I was no one. He nodded, tears glistening. And now, she said, turning toward the grey sky, we rebuild, not the mansion, but the hearts inside it. Below, Ngozi watered the flowers, humming. The same guards who once ignored her now bowed respectfully. The air felt lighter, purged. As evening fell, Amara walked through her home one last time as Mama Grace, not in rags, but in memory. The mop leaned quietly against the wall, her final disguise resting beside it. She smiled at it the way one smiles at a mirror after a long battle. You showed me truth, she whispered. Then she climbed the stairs to her son's room, where the silver cross lay on the table beside a flickering candle. Together, they prayed, not for revenge, but for peace. Outside, thunder softened into distant rain. The mansion that once hid deceit now held truth in every echo. And when dawn came, light spilled through the windows like forgiveness, revealing not a cleaner, not a queen, but a woman reborn by her own courage. Because sometimes, to find who truly loves you, you must first disappear. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, drop a comment and let us know where you are watching from. Africanfolktales 247 will love to hear from you again. And please don't forget to like, share and subscribe so you don't miss out on our interesting stories.